Okay, well, thanks to everybody who came in person or on Zoom. There's quite a few of you online, so the end, I will take a little bit of time to do questions if people have them. But just because it's a blend of Zoom and in person, if we can just get through the slides that I have, and then at the end we can do questions, that would be awesome. So my goal for this whole class is to just kind of give you the tips and the tools that I have used over the last few years to build my business from open houses. So when I moved to Minnesota about 5 years ago, I didn't really know anybody and I didn't want to pay for a bunch of leads. So I just started doing a lot of open houses and it worked really well for me. So I just kept doing it. And I have taken a lot of time to observe how other people do open houses and I wanted to be different than what I was seeing out there. So this is just kind of a compilation of what has worked for me personally and how I have taken notes over the years of being different than other agents out there that are doing open houses. So my quick disclaimer at the beginning of all of this is open houses aren't going to work for every single person. And it is definitely a long game. After taking this class, we do 2 or 3 open houses. I'm not promising that it's going to change the business. It's something that you have to commit to and do for an extended period of time, just like anything else in real estate to really see those results. But if it's something that you feel like you're missing the mark on, or you really want to utilize in your business, this is going to be a great class for tools to use for the long road in terms of doing open houses. So let's get started. The goal of this class is not to teach you how to host an open house, but to create an experience. And I do think that's the difference between the way I like to host open houses and the way a lot of other agents just do them, is they kind of feel like they're there as an obligation, either a listing agent or their own seller, instead of creating an experience and really setting the groundwork when somebody walks into your open house, that's the first encounter that they're gonna have with you in person as an agent. And that can be a very valuable 15 to 20 minutes if you use it the right way. So for me, like I said, why open houses? It's a free lead gen source. It's face-to-face, which you don't really get with a lot of other opportunities. And it's a way for you to practice conversations in person and practice connecting with people. Because at the end of the day, this is a connections business and this is a people business, and we just happen to sell real estate. So that's something that has to be honed in and practice, that skill set, to be able to deliver really good people skills in a very quick period of time, specifically the way that that person needs to be communicated with. The best way for you to be the expert is through confidence, empathy, relationship skills, and learning how to ask really thought-provoking questions. And I think it's funny that being a really good realtor is not on this list, because it's not a prerequisite to hosting an open house. I had the very first sale I ever had was a cash buyer walked into one of the very first open houses I ever did. I had no idea how to write an offer. I had no idea anything about how to get started, but I sold him that house. So I didn't have to have the experience. You don't have to be good at what you do. You just have to care. You have to know that you have resources like you do on our team to be able to help you if you get put in that position. But I think so many agents focus on, I have to be the best agent before I can start doing open houses or before I can go on showings. You don't have to be, you just have to start. So a few tips on how to prepare. I like to get there early if you can. That way you're not opening up the door right as people are walking in. I know if you're stacking open houses, sometimes that isn't the case, or if you're coming from previous showings, but just if you can make it early so that you're set up and you get a second to breathe before people start walking in, I have found that to be really helpful for me. I like to put out open house signs, directionals, a couple right in front of the door, just as many as you can. I would say I usually do like 6 to 8, depending on where the open house is. If it's right off of a main busy road, probably don't need that many, but if you're winding through quite a few streets, like in a subdivision or something, that can be helpful for people. Advertising on the MLS, like we all know to do, is great. And then doing social media platforms too is really great. Early on, when I had no listings and no clients, I did a lot of open houses and I looked really busy to the people that were online. I would say, perception is reality. So if somebody has the perception that you're really busy and you're in a lot of listings and you're looking at a lot of houses, then it's it's easier for you to look like you have a book of business if you don't. I have really enjoyed playing music in the house. So I'll either bring my laptop or my phone or a speaker. And I typically choose a song that kind of fits that home. Whether it's like I've done jazz in mid-century houses, and that seems to just really like set the tone. Again, playing back to creating that experience, super helpful for people to walk in and just kind of like feel the mood. Around the holidays when people have Christmas decor up, playing Christmas music is really nice. It just kind of fills in the gaps for that silence whenever there's like an awkward transition or somebody's coming, somebody's going. It's just really nice to have some music in the background so it's not just dead silent. I've gotten a lot of compliments from people that they love that when there's music there. And then obviously just making it as bright as possible is really great too by opening up all the blinds, turning on the lights, which is why it's nice to get there early and be able to do that before people come in so that you're not doing all of that while people are starting to come. So one of the biggest things that I have learned to do that I would say is different than most agents, and this goes back to feeling like this is an experience that I'm cultivating versus an obligation to the listing agent, is getting good at asking questions. I think all of us have had a time where somebody has asked us a question or worded it in a specific way where it's very thought provoking and it really made you think about whether that was a decision that you were making, or whatever the case may be, but somebody in your life knew you well enough to be able to ask you a really good question to get you kind of thinking about something maybe in a way that you hadn't had before. And that's what buyers really, really like, is because a lot of times they come in and think about, even with clients that you already have, there's a lot of times they think they know what they want, they think they know something, they think they're dead set on something, but finding out why that's the case. Maybe you have a buyer who's like, I'm really set on putting 20% down, and they just won't let up from that. And you're like, can you tell me more about why that's so important to you? And they think that they had to. There's just a lot of value in asking why, because sometimes people don't even know why they're so dead set on something until they get challenged on it. And challenging somebody on something does not mean you're trying to change their mind. It does not mean that you think that they're wrong. It's truly just asking good questions to figure out the root, because then when you know the root of something, you can really figure out whether it's something that is in fact important to that person that you need to honor, or if you can expand their thinking into a different way. And that has been kind of like the ticket and the key for me personally, is just really digging deep and getting to know people at a different level versus just hearing what they're saying and being like what I have coined like an order taker realtor, where you just take down their order of what they say they want and go try to find it for them. 90% of the time, people aren't actually going to buy what they originally told you that they were looking for. And it's our job to figure out what is changing from the first time you told me you want something to what you're actually going to write an offer on. So here's an example of a few of these questions. And I'll tell you why I like to ask these specifically. So are you just getting started with your search, or have you been looking for a while? This is one of my first and favorite questions that I ask people when they come in my open house, because right away, this tells me whether or not they have an agent. And I can get that answer without having to ask them explicitly if they have an agent, because that's what most people are asking right away. And it's such a turn off question, because people are like, well, you don't even want to have anything to do with me. And that's what everyone's asking right away. So the way they answer this will tell you that, oh yeah, we've been looking for a while. We've lost out on 2 houses. We're just really getting tired of looking at places. This market's crazy. And then you'll know, okay, they've written 2 offers. They obviously have an agent. Or, oh no, this is the first open house actually that we've ever been to. Most likely don't have an agent. And then that can guide you on whether or not you want to continue that conversation, because nothing is more frustrating than when because you can have a really great connection and have a really great conversation at an open house with somebody who has an agent. So just because it's going really well doesn't mean they're going to work with you. The one thing that's a great skill to learn is figuring out who to spend your time on so that your conversion can be higher. And that doesn't mean that, you don't have the conversation with somebody just because they have an agent. It's fine to do that, but spend more time and focus on the people that you know that don't. And so that's important to find out in the beginning, so you're not spending 20 minutes talking to somebody that has an agent, and then you let somebody slip out the door that doesn't. Are you checking out other houses today is another great question to kind of figure out if they have an agent or not, if they're just going to open houses. Yep, our agent wasn't available for this one, so we just popped into the open house. We have showings after this. Like, that'll tell you a lot more than than it seems like it will based on how they answer that question. I love to ask, is this a price point that you feel comfortable in? I absolutely hate using the word afford. People cringe at that. People get weird about money. Is this a price point you feel comfortable in? Because that completely takes off the how much are you pre-approved for? Are you pre-approved? All that kind of grossness kind of revolves around money. Because oftentimes, for me personally, at least with my clients, I've experienced where they get qualified for a lot more than they actually want to spend. Some people, what price point they feel comfortable in really takes away like what's your max pre-approval and all of that, where it kind of sounds just like a money grab a little bit from their perception. And so, and then how they answer that too can help you determine whether or not they've talked with a lender, whether or not they have an agent, because most of the time people won't know the answer to that question if they haven't talked with a lender. If they don't have a lender, they likely don't have an agent. So it kind of just all falls back to that, asking really good questions to get a lot of information without having to be super direct about, are you pre-approved? Do you have an agent? What made you stop by today is another great question that I love, because that tells you right away what's most important to these people. And instead of saying, what are you looking for in a house? And then they start to go through the 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, 1 garage, like the standard stuff. What made you stop by today? What was enough for you to take an hour out of your Saturday to come look at this house? Was it the yard? Okay, so the yard is super, super, super important to you, and now I know that. So figuring out why they came and why that's important to them is a really quick way for those people to feel really seen and understood while they're inside of your open house. Do you have an agent that's working for you, or are you still interviewing realtors? That's another really great line that I've loved to use, because a lot of people don't know that you should be interviewing realtors. And I personally encourage it, because very seldom when somebody talks to multiple agents, do they not choose to work with me. And I feel really confident in that. And I also think it gives people the permission that I'm not trying to like keep them from talking to other people. Because when people feel like, oh, I would highly encourage you to go talk to a couple other people, and if you feel like we're the best fit, I would love to work for you. That just feels so like they're the decision maker, and it's not me. People love to have freedom. People love to have choice. People love to have control. So when you can be calculated while giving that to them, they feel so, so good about working. And then the last one I have on here is, if the right house came on the market today, would you be ready to move? And that's a great one for people to figure out, like, how motivated are you actually? Because sometimes people don't know. They're like, well, I know my kids are in school until, 2026, and we need them to be in this district. So I'm really just kind of getting a feel for what our next house needs to be, but really we actually can't move for another year and a half. Or yes, if X, Y, and Z came on the market, if that house with the pool and the 3-car garage with the private backyard came on the market, we would do whatever it takes. We would move. That really helps you figure out how to continue to follow up with that person, because nothing's going to be more annoying to that individual is if you missed their motivation in that conversation and you're following up with them as if they're an A buyer and they're actually a C buyer. Because all of us have urgency because we're in sales. Not everybody else is going to have that same urgency. So figuring out where they're at is going to be crucial when it comes to appropriate follow-up time. Pain points are something that we hear about a lot with people, like what causes them to want to move. Here's a few of them, and here's what they are and how to identify them quickly. Also questions. I just ask a lot of questions in open houses is basically what it is. And these are just kind of guided questions. So these are specifically for pain points. So what's working well for you in the space that you have now? This will tell you what people like about their current home, what works well, what they probably wouldn't want to change. And it tells you a lot about how that person lives in their home based on what they currently like. What is something that drives you crazy about your current space? This is another way to find out what doesn't work for this person's lifestyle. They hate all the closed off rooms. They love to entertain. They need an open floor plan. There's so much that you can learn about who people are, what they value, and how they live in their spaces when you ask them these questions. And this is one that people have really, like, I've seen people stop in their tracks when I ask them this. What does making a move change for you in your life? And that's a great question for people to be like, well, this would allow me to be closer to work so I could spend more time with my kids. This would be downsize, and I'd be able to save a lot of money per month so I can put more in retirement. Like, you have to connect the move to an emotion, because moving is a huge undertaking. It's expensive. It's emotionally taxing. It takes a lot of time. we do this every day, so we kind of forget how much of an emotional toll it can take on a person. We help people with this day in and day out, and some people move 2 or 3 times in their entire lifetime, so it's a big undertaking. So really connecting that emotion of like, what is this move gonna do for you? And having people put that into words so that they can kind of start to process that is really helpful. Another great one is, how long has making a move been on your mind? This will tell you if you're working with somebody who's a really slow decision maker, somebody who's really quickly, somebody who makes rash decisions and is decisive, or somebody who just really needs their hand held the whole time. Because if somebody's like, I've been thinking about it for years, that's a very different buyer than somebody who started thinking about it 2 weeks ago and they're already at open houses. Another line that I love that just really opens up the floor to be able to hear this person with whatever they need to say is just tell me more, or tell me more about that. And it's a very open-ended question, and then that person, it gives that person permission to kind of focus more on whatever they feel like they want to focus more on, instead of us driving the conversation by asking very specific questions. So previously, I would have people sign in on my open house, but I have just found things are changing. People don't love to do that. I was getting a lot of pushback. Nobody wanted to give me that information. So what I do now is, if I feel like I have a good connection with somebody at an open house that I want to continue to follow up with, I will actually send them my digital business card. And what I tell them is, I can say whatever I want inside this open house, but you have no idea who I am, and you have no idea if any of what I'm saying is true. And so I would love for you to take some time to look at this digital business card, just to get some validation of what I've been saying. And I have my Google business reviews linked on there. I have my Instagram page linked on there, just a bunch of resources for people to go and look and see if what they heard and felt from my open house today matches up with how I present online. And then I tell them, after you've taken a couple days to do that, I'll follow back up with you. And again, it just puts the permission on them to like have time to look me up, have time. They're not pressured inside the open house to sign something with me or give me all their information. Like, nobody likes that because they just don't trust you at that point. So if you can remove that a little bit and still have all the full intention of getting that information from them, but just making them feel like they're in control, I've had tons of success with that. It's all about being different. So just a few things that I do that I have noticed not a ton of other agents do is opening the door for people when they get there. I tell everybody, I'm so glad that you stopped by today. Just make it like a really comfortable, inviting environment versus, I can't tell you how many open houses I went to when I was kind of trying to figure out how I wanted to do mine. And I would go to other agents' open houses and they're just sitting in the kitchen on their laptop and barely said hello. Didn't really want to interact, didn't really want to talk, like, and so when you can greet somebody and you can smile and you can be that presence, it makes all the difference. What else? Let me see if so those are just like a list of questions that I would ask. One thing that I also have started doing that I have found to work really, really well is to tell people what they can expect from me once the open house is over. This is where I find a lot of agents that come to me that are like, I can't close in open houses and they're not working for me. It's because they're leaving the client that they had a really great conversation with no game plan and no idea of what's happening next. So that person leaves and they're like, that was great, but like, now what? I have no idea. So when you can tell them, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, that just takes all of the guesswork and all of the questioning out of the buyer, and they feel so much more stress-free because they know exactly what's going to happen. And maybe that is, I'm going to text you my digital business card, and then I'm going to follow up with you tomorrow to cross-reference our schedules and set up a time where we can meet in the upcoming week. And then that person knows exactly what to expect. So that's worked really well too. If you have not taken the DISC profile, I highly recommend doing that. There's 4 different types, the D, I, S, and C. This is a skill that takes practice, but once you can learn this, it's extremely helpful, not only in real estate, but in personal relationships too, where when you're talking to somebody, if you can figure out which personality type they are rather quickly, it will help you a lot. Nothing is more frustrating for me personally. I have a D personality. So nothing is more frustrating for me than when I'm talking to an S and they have no idea that I'm a high D and they are just like on and on and on and on and rambling. And it's like, the open house is not the place to do that. There's mirror and matching is a really good skill set to build, and this will help you with that. And it's just kind of doing back to people what they're doing to you. So if they're short and decisive and to the point, do that back. If they want to chat and they're telling you their whole life story, listen. And getting really good at doing that and being able to figure out who you are is really helpful, because then when you're following up with that person, you kind of know like, hey, these need to be short text, these need to be to the point, this person doesn't want to be my best friend, versus the S, they want you to be their best friend and they want you to talk a lot. And those are just different things that are really helpful to know. So this is just a little bit of a breakdown of like how these different types of people make decisions. And then there's a free way to take this test at that website. So if you haven't taken that, I would highly recommend it. So the other thing I love to talk about is inductive thinking versus deductive thinking. So inductive thinking is where you start with, this is what I think, and then you talk about here's why, versus talking about why you think something and then ending with your conclusion. And it's really helpful because then people know where your head's at and they know what the explanation is for. It's just much more clear. And so an example of this would be, based on my conversation with you today, I would love to get you connected to a lender so that you can find out what price point makes the most sense for you, so that you don't have to guess about that while you're going to open houses. Starting with like, that's what I think the next best step is, and then explain why. So sometimes I think agents can like start to ramble on about the benefit of who you work with matters, and talking about how the changes in the NAR settlement have changed what buyer representation looks like, and all these different things where people are like, I don't even know what you're saying, and I don't know why you're talking to me about this. So if you can hone in on the skill of like telling people exactly why this matters for them, it will change everything, because then you're not just, we know it matters for them, but we're just rambling at that point to them if we're not clearly telling them where our head is at. I love to take the assumptive close when I'm talking with somebody and I know they don't have an agent, the conversation's going well, they seem engaged, just assuming that we're gonna work together. And if at later time they tell me that they have chosen somebody else, or they interviewing other agents, that's fine. But for this case of the open house, I'm just gonna assume, because I don't want to look at somebody and say, hey, do you think that we should work together? Because if there's doubt in my mind, there's certainly gonna be doubt in theirs. So you have to just act confident, you have to act strong. And sometimes people will walk out of my open house and they'll be like, well, I guess I have an agent now, and I didn't even know that I did when I walked in there, but she's great and she's helpful and she communicates well with me. So why would I look anywhere else? And that's kind of the goal of the open house, is to just get really good at doing all of this in about 15 minutes. Sundays are gold and Mondays are old. This is something that my first real estate brokerage taught me, and I have never given it up. So what I'll do is I'll usually follow up with somebody that I meet like that same day, and I'll just say, hey, it was so good to meet you. I really enjoyed chatting about X, Y, and Z. I look forward to following up with you in the coming week. And I don't say anything about real estate. Don't ask any questions. It's just great because nobody else is doing that. So when they can get a text from you after having a great conversation with you, it's just like one of those things where, why would you look anywhere else? So how to follow up well? This is another question that I get a lot. So the follow-up is the key, because so many people really, really drop the ball on this after I've had a lot of conversations with agents around open houses and where people are feeling like they're missing the mark, and follow-up is a big one. Like I said, I'll do the same day, text or video. If it's a younger person, I'll do a video. And just kind of say, I'll just recap our conversation. It was great to chat with you about whatever we chatted about. I just wanted you to have my number accessible here. Like, I'll be in touch with you and everything. And then two or 3 days later, obviously, whatever you said you would follow back up, do that. And then if they're not texting you back, keep reaching out. If somebody doesn't want to hear from you, they will tell you. And a couple of my favorite things to say are like, I don't want to drop the ball with communication, so just wanted to follow back up. And make it about them. Like, don't make it about yourself. Like, I'm trying to think of an example of that, but so many times when agents follow back up, it's like, hey, are you still looking to move? Or, hey, is making a move still something you're thinking about? And that's like not about that person. The other question that I really like is, has anything changed since the last time we talked? Cause that's a really, really like not defensive way to just ask, like something in someone's life could change drastically in the 2 days since we first met them to now. So asking like, has something in your life changed? And that is, I've gotten some crazy responses to that. Like people have had death in the family, people have had like, it's crazy with somebody ghosts you or doesn't respond. Like it's not always because they don't want to move or they didn't like you or they're never gonna text you back. Life just gets crazy and we think about people way more than they think about us. So continuing with the follow-up from a place of care and compassion versus just like chasing a sale. I have some text threads where I have texted people like a lot and it's not, and they end up buying. Like you just continually have to remind yourself that if they don't want to talk to you, they will tell you that. If you're bothering them, they will tell you that. But if they're just not responding, sending them homes and saying, hey, I saw this and I thought of you. It reminded me of the one that we met at. That kind of stuff is so helpful to them and they are paying attention to who's continuing to stay in touch and who's not. So again, just like kind of on the follow-up thing, like I said, this is a big part of where I see a lot of agents drop the ball. So just being really intentional with that. Some people put their people in the CRM and they do the follow-up that way. Some people do Google Calendar, whatever works for you is the best follow-up system because it's the one you're gonna do. But having some kind of system where you are following up with people and it's not like I had a great connection. I texted them on Sunday night, they didn't text me back. I texted them on Friday, they didn't text me back, and then I never talked to them again is a story that I hear way too often from agents. And that person is gonna buy with somebody, it's just not gonna be them. So you have to be the one that's the easiest to access, the one that they remember the most, and the one that provided value. And the best way to do that is through continuing staying in touch with them, even if they're not messaging you back right away. This one is just a few things that I do differently that I noticed a lot of other agents weren't doing. Again, just asking these kind of questions like, does this feel like the right time? What questions do you have instead of, do you have any questions? The littlest tweaks that you can make to your verbiage will make the biggest difference. And it just kind of want the way that you speak to people to feel inviting and not like you're up here and they're down here. And just being like running the race with them instead of like being the coach yelling at them from the sidelines is like the best kind of analogy that I can use because they really want a teammate and they want someone that they feel like they're with versus just being yelled at by. Just like I kind of talked about earlier, like consistency over time is going to be the best way to have success with open houses. I have done open houses almost every weekend, multiple open houses every weekend for 5 years. Like it's not something that I just did 5 times and I built my business from it. I consistently have to sow into it. I consistently have to do it. And that's just what I have committed to. So I don't want anyone to feel like this is just like a fast track to open house success. It takes time. It takes effort picking the kinds of open houses that you find success in. For me personally, am not a new construction suburbs girl. You will hardly find me out there doing open houses. I'm a 1920s charmer in the city type of open house person. That's where my people are. That's what I know inside and out. And I can speak to those kind of houses really, really, really well. So that's where I am most of the time. Finding an open house that you're passionate about, that you like, that you're good at, that you know well is a huge asset. And it absolutely, the times that you do, the price points that you do, the locations that you do will all play a part in finding your more ideal client. And I kind of did a little bit of everything when I was getting started, just to get a feel for what I liked and what worked for me. And that's really where I had the most success, which is in the cities under 500,000, old house, good bones. That was just, I love those houses and I can sell those really well. So finding your niche, I guess, is kind of a good way to put that. And like wherever you want, and you can also do this in a location or a price point that you want to grow into. So this doesn't have to be what you're good at now. Like maybe let's just say you have the old charm dialed in and you want to expand into the suburbs. That'd be a great way to do that by starting to do open houses out there. So just remember that where you do open houses and the price point that you're meeting people at is where they're likely going to buy. So if you don't want $100,000 condo buyer, don't do $100,000 condo open house, because then you're gonna meet buyers who are looking for that. So, when I was in ISA several years ago, I learned this stat that on average, it takes 18 conversations to close a client. So that's what I'm saying. You can't just text somebody twice and expect them to transact with you. You have to be good at the follow-up, and you have to be good at value added follow-up. It's not just the follow-up, but it's how you're speaking to them while you're doing that too. You think about them way more than they think about you. We are a blip on someone's radar of life, and they are our entire life. They are how we make an income, what we do, where we spend all of our time during the day. So just remembering that too is really important, because it can feel like, I know, at least for me personally, and a lot of other agents I've talked to, it's like, oh my gosh, I had such a good conversation with that person, and now they haven't texted me back all week. Like, what the heck happened? Like, that's just what happened. Text them back next week. Another big thing I see with agents, this is a very ego business. And so many agents want to be like, I ranked this, I did this, I'm certified for this, I this. If you tell a consumer that you did $5 million of volume or 50, they literally don't know the difference. So don't talk about yourself. It needs to be all about them. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen this happen, where I can just like see the glazed over eyes starting to happen on people when all these agents are doing is just making it all about themselves. So know when to stop selling yourself. There's an absolute difference between speaking to your qualifications and building credibility and bragging. And if you're bragging in an open house, literally nobody wants to work with you. And the other question that I love to ask is, what can I tell them that they cannot find on Zillow? Because then they need you. If somebody walks in and you're like, this is welcome to this 5-bed, 4-bath with a 3-car garage. It's 2,800 square feet and it's priced at $699. Duh. What can you tell them that they don't know? What local restaurants, what shops, what parks, what fun things are there to do? What block parties do they have? What value can you bring to where this person is like, I want her to show me more houses because she knows what's going on. And that's why honing in on what your niche market is really helpful, because then you can speak to these kind of things that people walk through and they're like, these are old original 1920s windows that have been restored instead of replaced. Like, if you can notice that and you can tell people that, huge value add. So what can you tell people that they cannot find on Zillow is such a great way for you to have, like, even if you have one little nugget of information that you can take to an open house for each house, huge value add. And then just to kind of end things, one of my favorite quotes is, people will often forget what you say, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And that, as I get older, like, I just realize how much truth is in that. And that's why I kind of just labeled this class as like creating an experience and not just hosting an open house. Because when people leave your open house, they really need to feel cared for, valued, supported, understood, or you'll never hear from them again. If you're just another agent that they walked into an open house and they're doing that 4 times a week, you're going to be forgotten. There's something that has to be different about you, and the connection piece is going to be the biggest part to that. So building connections, listening instead of talking about yourself, and really hearing people and meeting them where they're at and running the race with them instead of coaching them from the sideline is going to be the biggest difference between you just having open houses that you can't seem to get anyone from and starting to close deals from them. So now we can do questions if anyone has them. Does anyone in person have them? We can start with that.
Hey, I've got one, and thank you in advance for everything you've done with this class. This was fantastic. What I was curious, you touched briefly on something called the Bling app. That's kind of where I'm finding like I need the most help. A lot of these conversations I can have, but it's getting the softball approach to getting contact info to lead to it without being just every other guy that says you have to sign in and then nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you for bringing that up, because that was one thing I didn't talk too much about, but I actually don't ask people to sign in right away. I let people come in and I let them get comfy, because if that's the first thing you ask, nobody, like you said, nobody wants to do it. I always try to put myself in their shoes too, and I picture myself going to the first open house I ever walked into, having no idea what I'm doing, having no idea what to expect. And then that's the first thing that happens and there's no previous conversation, like I probably would just wanna leave, right? So I don't ask people to sign in, I greet them at the door. My actual line that I say to every single person is, I'm not gonna follow you around, that's super annoying, nobody wants that. And I'll get some feedback from you after you've seen anything before you head out, and then that sets the expectation that they are going to have to talk to me again before they leave, but they know that they're not gonna get followed, they know that they can take their time. And then that, I just see like this wave of relief wash over people's face when I say that, because they know I don't have to sign in right now, I can just enjoy my tour, this agent's not gonna be behind me, following me. And then everybody expects to give feedback at the end of it, so it's just a really well-rounded start to that. And then at the end, when they're coming back, that's when I'll start with those questions of like, are you just getting started? You've been looking for a while. And then you can kind of feel out where they're at. If they like tell you right away they have an agent, honestly, I just let people go. Cause it's not worth trying to prospect them if they have an agent, like that's not what we're there for. So, but if the questions that you're asking are very clear that they don't have an agent or they are still interviewing people, that's when you can kind of dive into sending them your digital business card. Is that helpful?
That is, I guess if you could then help understand the transition to that conversation where, because like you're having the feedback, I get that. But then like, oh, by the way, take this down. Is it something they just scan? Like I don't need to get their number from them voluntarily. It's gonna connect through the app.
No, I send it to them via text. So I like hit share app. And then I have them type their phone number in so that I don't
Okay.
miss. And then I send it to them.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Who else? Anyone else? Yeah,
Find there's certain days or times during like the month where you see like more of the traffic.
yeah,
in the house.
that's a good question. So somebody in here asked if there's a certain day of time that I see better traffic with open houses. Honestly, no. I've pretty much been like a Saturday, Sunday, mid-morning to early afternoon girl. I've done a few like happy hour ones. The one thing I would avoid is the Vikings during the Vikings game. I learned that lesson for sure. It just seems to be pretty quiet out there during that time. But other than that, no. I mean, the thing that I really want to help you guys with this is if you can do this really well, all you need is one person to come in. Like this doesn't need, honestly, I like it when there's like 1 to 5 people versus 20, because then you can't capture all those people. So this is a class that the tools in here are gonna help, like even if you just have one person. So I wouldn't, and obviously we wanna have busy open houses, right? But I wouldn't have the goal to be like, how many people can I get? Just get really, really good so that when you have 1 or 2 people, you can still close them. Yeah. Yeah. I think there was one more over here. Yeah.
When do you put out your signs?
I do them the same day, cause I've had
Night
cities,
before.
no, I've had the cities, the question was when to put out the signs. I just go early and put them out right before and then pick them up. Cause sometimes I'm doing 3 a day and they're not in the same city. And so I don't have 30 signs to go do that. And then that's so much driving back to those places. So if you're like doing them in your neighborhood and or you have a listing in your neighborhood or something like that, maybe doing it the night before would be smart, cause you're not like going far either way, but for me, that's just not realistic. So, and there's a lot of this that can be modified for each individual person. This is kind of just like a roadmap. And the way I speak to somebody might sound really weird to one of you, and you're like, I need to switch up this verbiage. This just doesn't sound like me. That's completely fine, because the right people are going to be attracted to the way that you just naturally speak. And I think for me, something that has allowed me to sustain doing open houses this often, this much, is because I like them and this is just how I am. Like if you meet me at an open house and then you meet me in person, I'm the same person. And I did that on purpose so that I don't feel like I'm drained after doing these open houses because I had this like fake persona. It's like, no, what you see is what you get. If you like it, great. If you don't, there's another agent for you. So there's some confidence that comes in that too. And then the other thing I'll say really quickly is even if I have nobody come to my open houses, I bring my laptop, I do content for social media, like. Don't just think of that as a 2 hour period of wasted time if nobody comes. Use that as office hours, use that as video filming outside. Find something quirky in the house to talk about. Hey, here's old knob and tube wiring. Hey, here's lath and plaster. Hey, here's how you can check if there's original hardwood floors under this by pulling up the register. Like, there's really cool stuff that you can find in every single house and give tips to people, so it doesn't have to just be like, nobody came and my Sunday's ruined. So that's a mindset shift that I had to make too, so that I don't feel like I've wasted my time. Anyone else? No? Cool.
Thank you for sharing the, link. Is it called?
Blake, yep,
Okay,
yep, yeah,
Had always gone the
Yeah.
route too of, you don't have people sign in and, just interesting hearing you lay it out this way too, so.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah. I did the open house sign-ins for a really long time. Probably just about 6 months ago, I switched to this, because I was starting to see more and more people get really hesitant with giving their information before they have fact checked you.
For sure.
So that's why I'm somebody that's gonna address the elephant in the room, so it's not weird, and I'll tell that to people, like. I know that you need to fact check me and look me up before you could possibly feel comfortable having another conversation around your biggest investment, so here's all the tools you need to do that, because I know they're gonna do it anyway. So I just wanna make it easy for you, I wanna make it accessible, and then based on what you see, when you do this due diligence for yourself, if you like what you see, I'd love to chat with you again. And then it just takes the pressure off the fact that like, it's funny because I have asked some of my past clients if they looked me up, every single person has. They're just gonna do it. So when you make it funny and you make it obvious and you make it just like, you know that they're doing it and they know that they're gonna do it, it's just kind of fun and it's not weird. And it's approachable. And then people can laugh about doing it because you weren't trying to hide the fact that you knew that they were.
So you're saying about 6 months ago is when you switched to this?
Yeah,
And how do you feel how has it been?
so much better.
Just in comparison?
So much better. Yep, because at first, all I was doing with the sign-ins was like getting people's email, phone number. There was like a few questions that would like auto-populate on the app that I was using.
Yeah.
But literally the only thing people have to do now is give me their cell phone number. And then it sends the Blink app and then they have the links to everything. And then after they look up all of that stuff and do their due diligence, I've never had somebody not want to send me their email and the rest of the information that I'm looking for, but it just comes so much easier and so much more naturally when it's just one thing. They're typing their number in quick in my phone and then they get all the resources. Yeah.
Love that approach. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been super helpful and I've definitely, this is another thing about real estate that I just really like is when something isn't working anymore, like we have all the control to pivot and try something else. And yeah, this has been about 6 months that I've been using this app. I absolutely love it. I don't even take business cards to my open houses anymore because you hand someone your card, you're never gonna hear from them again. You have to control the conversation and the best way to do that is to be the one that gets their number. And then you send them all the resources that they're already gonna look at when they get back in the car.
We have one person decline to, technically texting
Yeah.
the card versus do the QR code.
Yeah,
Only it's the same.
yeah. Yep, totally. And if they want to scan, there is the QR option on this app and this is free. So it's a great resource because you can do the QR code, you can text it to people, you can email it to people, you can put as many links in there as you want, you can put a photo. It's just like, it just looks really professional in my opinion. It's very like buttoned up. And I actually saved it as a widget on my home screen. So it's just really quick and easy. Yeah, Mac did too. So it's super quick and easy when you're in a house. You don't have to like shuffle through your phone to find the app. It's just super simple. So, and then it doesn't go away and someone's not gonna fall out of your card's not gonna fall out of someone's pocket and be lost forever. So, yeah.
When you text them, it like automatically sends information about you.
Yep, so when you download the app, it's really user friendly. You'll be able to see everything and how it's laid out. And if anybody wants to see mine after I finish it, oh, there, Max trying it. It's like, it'll fill in all the blanks. And you can either put in more information or less information depending on how much you want. But it's very customizable. Yeah, I honestly haven't had any issues with it. And the person who's receiving it doesn't have to have the app to view it. So they can just open it right up. But yeah, if anybody uses even like one or two things from this class, if it works well, if you feel like you had a different kind of conversation, I always love to hear about how it impacts people. So don't hesitate to reach out and tell me what worked for you, or maybe if you try something different and it worked really well for you, I would love for you to share it with me. And yeah, I think we can just all elevate the open house experience together for different people, because it is a really rare opportunity for us to have FaceTime with somebody and really like see their heart and see where their mind and their emotions are at, and just really meet them where they are. And that when you can do that, you don't have to be you don't have to be the best real estate agent out there. People just want to feel like you know them and they will trust you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Good request, thank you.
All right.
Do you have any advice on what to put on the Blink app for like brand new agents who don't have reviews or past sales or anything like that?
I would link the Pemberton Homes team. Pemberton Home Team Google reviews. There's like hundreds. Just do
Okay.
that until you have your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. The nicest thing about having a big team to fall back on is you can say we, and that includes all of us. And when you're new and you're just building all those things, you really need to use that, because you don't have those individual reviews to fall back on. And if you're brand new and you, maybe you don't have any sales or you're just getting started, being vulnerable with people and telling them the truth is so like human to human, like they feel that. So if you can say, I'm building up my reviews and it would be so helpful to have one from you so that people can have some insight as to what your experience was like working with me. I really enjoyed working with you, and I think people would find your opinion to be helpful. Like, that's such a great way to ask, because it's like you're valuing that person's thoughts instead of just saying, will you leave me a review? It's like night and day difference of how you word it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.